Indeed, those who reverence the rights decreed by God demonstrate the righteousness of their hearts. Livestock offerings during pilgrimage. The livestock provide you with many benefits for a period before being donated to the ancient shrine. For each congregation, we have decreed rites whereby they commemorate the name of God for providing them with the livestock. Your God is one and the same God. You shall all submit to him. Give good news to the obedient. They are the ones whose hearts tremble upon mentioning God. They steadfastly persevere during adversity. They observe the contact per salat, and from our provisions to them they give to charity. The animal offerings are among the rites decreed by God for your own good. You shall mention God's name on them while they are standing in line. Once they are offered for sacrifice, you shall eat therefrom and feed the poor and the needy. This is why we subdued them for you, that you may show your appreciation. Footnote: animal offerings from the pilgrims conserve the resources at the pilgrimage site. Note that almost 2 million pilgrims converge on Mecca during pilgrimage. Neither their meat nor their blood reaches God. What reaches him is your righteousness. He has subdued them for you, that you may show your appreciation by glorifying God for guiding you. Give good news to the charitable. Praise be to God. There was some things that stuck out to me. Visit the ancient shrine. Let's reverence the rights of God.
God bless you for reading. Yeah. Do you remember what it was that you wanted to comment? There's a lot of good verses.
I'm scanning or skimming through it, scanning through it. So what do about bearing false witness or somebody? If you guys want to go ahead, I'll just, God willing, I'll look through this and see where it was sticking out to me, so I don't hold up the line too much.
Hey, does anyone know how to start the event? I just realized that. Okay, I got it. Start event. Yeah, does anyone want to have any comments or questions regarding the verses? If not, I can kick things off.
I have.
Oh, good, please.
In the verse, let's just go back to the verses. Those who reverence, no, you shall maintain devotion. Okay, so 22:31. You shall maintain your devotion absolutely to God alone. Anyone who sets up an idol besides God is like one who fell from the sky, then gets snatched up by vultures or blown away by a deep ravine. So this one is actually, I paused there to see why did God make this the example of being an idol ship. It's like this falling specifically. What is special about falling then get snatched? It's not like we fell down all the way to the ground. So I searched, I put the verse on ChatGPT, and I got interesting analysis of this, and I wanted to share it. I'm gonna copy it and paste it. Then we can you can read, or I can read it to you guys.
If you can summarize.
Let me just see here. Okay. So the Quranic verse 22 emphasizes the importance of absolute devotion to God alone, warning that the association associating partners with God is like falling from the sky and being snatched away by the birds or blown into deep ravine. This vivid imagery illustrates the dire consequences of idolatry and the instability it creates in one's spiritual life, according to Islam Awakened. The verse part of the Surah Al-Hajj highlights that concept of monotheism, Tawheed, and the dangers of shirk, associating partners with God. So here's we're gonna go down to say, you shall maintain your devotion absolutely to God alone. This emphasizes the core principle of Islam, which is the belief in one God and the exclusive worship of Him. Anyone who sets up an idol besides God, this refers to the practice of idolatry, where one worship or venerates something or someone other than Allah, is like one who fell from the sky, then gets snatched up by vultures or blown away by the wind into deep ravine. This powerful simile illustrates the spiritual and physical consequences of shirk. Falling from the sky represents a loss of guidance, direction, and stability in one's life. Snatching by vultures symbolizes the rapid and painful destruction.
Peter, you there?
She got
I got a call that muted me. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Let's go back. So falling from the sky represents a loss of guidance, direction, stability in one's life. Snatching by vultures symbolizes the rapid and painful destruction of one's spiritual foundation. Being blown away by the wind indicates the loss of control and the instability to find a stable footing. Deep ravine represents a state of utter ruin and despair. The verse serves as a strong warning against associating partners with God and emphasizes the importance of sincere devotion to Allah alone. It highlights the idea that true guidance and stability come from worshiping God and avoiding idolatry. It is interesting because I think explains why God has chosen this example for idolatry, and I just wanted to share how amazing it is. Unless if there's anybody can explain more about why he used the example of falling and then getting snatched, it would be also awesome to learn.
Godwin, I'd like to give 2 cents on this. So the significance I see here, I'm just setting something out really quick, tagging everyone. Okay. Is that when you read Surah 2 verse 38, okay, it tells us that basically setting up another god beside God is God tell them to get out. We see, go down there from all of you. When guidance comes to you from me, those who follow my guidance will have no fear, nor will they grieve. That this is an indication that once we commit idol worship, we fall from God's domain into this dunya. And dunya means lower, right? So you're now here, you've fallen from the sky. You had a high status, and you lost that. And this is the consequence of setting up another, God beside God. And the God of every person who's here at the end of the day is their ego. But then in addition, you have this other aspect where they get snatched up, right? So the second you get here, now the devil's going to try his utmost to try to get at you. And if he can lead you astray, is equivalent to basically being blown away by the wind. And then the last one, into a deep ravine. To me, that's symbolism not just of hell, but that you're long forgotten. No one's having a funeral for you. No one's caring for you. You're, basically, your body, your presence is just long gone. I see these 4 stages basically as kind of a metaphor to what happens to most people when they chose to step out of God's kingdom and then enter this world. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
Yeah.
This
Go ahead.
okay. Go. Okay. Uh, my brief comment is to say that for one to fall from such a high to a deep ravine is simply a total loss. For anybody to set up idols beside God, he has completely lost everything about his life, from this world to the hereafter. He is a complete loser. So this is my own little comment here. Thank you.
I think it's as important that we have an understanding, a much deeper understanding of what constitutes idol worship than we did, I don't know, before coming to the message. The clarification by Quran, we be examining the Quran and the clarification by the Messenger Covenant. It helps us to understand how more nuances the idol worship is, and how much more aware of how to avoid it, compared to a lot of people that they don't think what they're doing is idol worship. In fact, they don't think what they're doing is idol worship today, and on the day of resurrection, they swear that by God that they were never idol worshippers. So this comes to the fact that they didn't consider their action idol worship. And but how we are different is that we are very conscious of it, that we may fall in idol worship, and we are examining ourselves much more carefully compared to the traditional Muslims, the Sunnis and the Shias. We do see within their groups and within their sects, they are more now aware of this situation, but still there's a very central hardcore area that they keep pressing on, that no, mentioning the messenger's names, not idol worship. And you can examine this and see how is that not an idol worship. You see you see these scholars, even when they comment on TV, some of them, they have a picture of Allah, the name of Allah on one side and the Muhammad on the other side. And this is basically duality in image, complete idol worship. So it shows how blessed we are as a generation, as people, and God has blessed us a lot to come to this more clear understanding about what idol worship is today, in both action and also in practice of religion. And I think that's really important.
Uh,
100%. Great comment.
I've got a comment on the next verse. It says, indeed, those who reverence their rights decreed by God demonstrate the righteousness of their hearts. That reminds me of the saying, put your money where your mouth is. So it's the rights are decreed in order for believers to gain credit by observing it, by reverencing it, as the word in here it says. It's really demonstrate that conviction that you have toward your belief. So it's just a good reminder. So it's the alternative to the verse above, where someone is lost, and a good example is given to get a good sense of what it is to be lost. And then this one is the alternative is ways that we can reach God and stay devoted to Him alone. Thank you. Back to you.
I want to say something regarding these two verses, 32 and 33, inshallah. God says, indeed, those who reverence the rights decreed by God demonstrates the righteousness of them. The livestock provide you with many benefits for a period before being donated to the ancient shrine. Okay, the Hajj for this year has just been concluded. And what we see around the world is that those who did not go to Hajj to observe this rite, they observe them in their houses, in their country home. These rites are meant only for those who go to Hajj to observe Hajj. I want to believe even those who are in Saudi Arabia, for as long as they did not leave their homes to go to the specific areas where the Hajj should be observed, they are not, because they are in Saudi Arabia does not mean they are observing Hajj. And they cannot also observe the rites of, one of these rites of, animal sacrifice. So God is talking about those who observe his commandments, as a decree. So it is not decreed for those who are in their homes, in their country homes, but for those who specifically go to Mecca to observe Hajj. So this is to say that everything they do is not acceptable to God. I stand to be corrected because the command here is that they are to donate these animals to the ancient shrine. I don't know if they have ancient shrines in their homes or in their country homes, though they donate the meat to their neighbors and whatever, but this is not what God commands us to do. So observing God's commands demonstrate the righteousness of our hearts. And for those who do this, would definitely be blessed by God. So God cannot accept what these people have spent so much money slaughtering their rams to eat and to donate to whoever they want to donate to. Thank you.
I wanted to. I know we talked about this in the previous study as well, but what's interesting, it says that the shrine, it has to be dedicated absolutely to God alone, right? When it's talking about this concept of like the Hajj, the ancient shrine, and this avoiding of any form of idol worship. Now, what's funny is if you look at the Kaaba, on the door to the Kaaba, what you find is you see two names, same size, same placement, from the ground, same amount of real estate and space. You wouldn't know which one's God and which one is a servant if you didn't, read Arabic. And this is the door of the Kaaba. This is what is being prophesied, on there. And then you go inside the Kaaba, share an image, right? There's a couple plaques and images, and one is called the Door of Repentance. If you look on this image on the bottom right, it's this gold door. And, sure enough, on that door, they have the same thing where they put God and Muhammad, same size, same shape, same distance to the ground. And it's ridiculous to think that the prophet came and said, hey guys, let's get rid of these other idols, Allat, Manat, Al-Uzza. And the Hadith says that they had statues of Abraham and Ismail. And now that they're gone, let's put my name right there up on the Kaaba, on the door of repentance. And oh, there's more. Let's look at this plaque. So if you look on the left of the door, there's this plaque that they included, right? And let's see what it says on this plaque. It says, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, all praise be to God, Lord of the universe, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon the most noble of messengers, our master Muhammad, and upon his family and upon all of his companions. Now, what's fascinating about this, I just stumbled on this the other day. There's actually a hadith where, so the word here that they apply to Muhammad is Sayyid, and you'll see this throughout like a lot of texts where they say, look, he's our master, he's our master. And it explicitly says in the hadith to not call him Sayyid, that only God is Sayyid. And this is a quote, you know, a what they consider an authentic hadith. And it goes to show, like, their whole thing is they just want to elevate his status to the point to put him next to God. They're doing the same thing that the Christians do. The only thing is they're saying, well, look, we're not calling him God. But we were talking about this like the other day. It's funny. So God, if you ask any traditionalist, how many names of does God have? And they'll say, oh, God has 99 names. Well, there's something in Arab culture where it says that the more names someone has, the higher their status. You know how many names they ascribe to Muhammad? On the low end, they ascribe 200 names. On the high end, they have as many as 4,000, 5,000 names. And some of these names are the same names that they ascribe to God. So this just, I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous. Like, you know, when you tell people that, hey, the religion has been inundated with idol worship, they're in disbelief. It's like, okay, then how do you explain all this? You know, and the question too is, how is it possible that some random guy in the 70s and 80s discovered this, that this is all, you know, that traditionalist Islam is inundated with idol worship? You know, where's all the mullahs? Where's all the sheikhs, the scholars saying, hey guys, how did this happen? How did we get Muhammad's name on the door of the Kaaba and this elevation of praise towards him? God bless you for putting the hadith. There's actually another one I found yesterday too, where the prophet is reprimanding someone for elevating the status of the companions. But yeah, definitely we can talk more about that in the content sharing. But I'll put it in as well. God. Anyone else want to comment? I'll put an article on this pollution of the Kaaba.
Whenever I read this stuff, peace be upon everybody, I just think of when God says the Arabs are the most arrogant, right? So this is all arrogance. They have to have their prophet elevated above Jesus, above all the other prophets in the book out of arrogance. Right? They have to have the best. That's kind of how I look at it anyway.
This kind of
There's all
reminds
these.
me of the children of Israel, right? Where they're saved from Pharaoh, right? They're brought on the correct path, and their desire is to have an idol like everyone else. Like they walk by people, they're committing shirk, right? And they're like, Moses, make something similar for us, right? And it's just like the Muslims, okay, you've been guided, you're on the right path now, you're on monotheism. And they look at the rest of the world and how they idolize Jesus and this and that, and Moses is the best, Jesus is the best, no, Muhammad is the best. They turn them into a golden calf.
I'm going to share these two hadith, basically that also, and it's just funny. Like I think there's value in the sense of debating with traditionalists using their own sources against them. So these are considered two Sahih hadith, where the prophet is, you know, attributed with rebuking those who are praising the companions or each other. I'll put them in the chat here. The first one says, a man came and praised Uthman in his face. Miqdad bin al-Aswad took dust and threw it on his face, saying, the apostle of Allah said, when you see those who are given to praising people, throw dust in their faces. And then here's another one. Abu Bakr said that when a man praised another man in his face in the presence of the Prophet, he said, you have beheaded your friend, saying it 3 times. He then said, one who cannot help expressing praise of his companions to say, I consider him such and such, as he intends to say, but I do not declare him pure with Allah. Right? They have all these hadiths saying that, you know, these people are guaranteed paradise. And they're the best of creation and this and that. Dust in your face. Anyone else want to comment on this or any other of the verses we read? So we read from 26 through 37 on chapter 22.
I've got a question, brother. On 36, it talks about the rights decreed by God for your own good. So that's mentioned here. Then mentioning God while they're in the line. Once he sacrificed, it says to eat therefrom and feed the poor and the needy. And then it gives the statement after that. This is why we subdued them for you. So animals are subdued for humans to not only eat and feed themselves, also feeding the poor and the needy. Now, it's not talking about just at the time of sacrifice. This is it, animal being subdued. It is subdued at the time of sacrifice, at any time. So I'm drawing the conclusion that at all times we gotta be concerned about others' state of hunger. If one is hungry, one is needy, we got to think about them, and that's the reason God subdued that. Is that, can it go as far as that at any time you eat, you gotta be conscious of that? Or is it more you see it in relation to the time of the sacrificing the animal? What do you think?
Anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I had a question about verse 26.
Wait. Before you get to 26, did you want to comment on Harry's question or a
Oh,
comment?
no, go ahead.
I mean, honestly, I think this is just to give us insight of, we take it for granted. And it's fascinating that God put this inside the Quran because back then, killing an animal was a big deal, right? This is your livelihood. You don't have refrigeration. You have to use it immediately. There was it was a more, how do you put it? A significant event. Today we mass produce beef and chicken and all kinds of delicious meats, and we really are disjoined with that process. That this is a live animal; it's a soul. It was raised. It breathed. It came here. It served its purpose, and we're taking its life for the sake of nourishing ourselves, right? It's one of these things that, yeah, when we're eating, let's just focus on the meat. It's very easy to forget that this was a live animal. And I think this aspect of showing our appreciation is to contemplate that God created this animal, is subdued them for us, that it makes it easy for us to treat as livestock. Rashad gives the example. Imagine if a cow is as ferocious as a lion, like how difficult that process would be, right? The fact that they're so docile, they're so subdued, and despite the fact that they're going to be slaughtered, they're not fighting and aggressive and this and that when done correctly, is a huge blessing. And it's one of these things that we should constantly be appreciative and thankful for. And here's just something to contemplate. In order to live, something has to die, right? Be it a fruit, a vegetable, or an animal. Like that's just the way that the Lion King, the circle of life operates. But it's something that we take for granted. That, yeah, you eating that burger required that an animal had to die. And it's not to say that, hey, we shouldn't eat meat. It's just that we should be extra appreciative of this blessing that God gave to us. Does anyone else want to comment or chime in on that?
Just like this religion in general, how like how God mixes the good seed and the bad seed, the good people and the bad people, and we learn from these bad people. We learn from their mistakes. Yeah, that's all I really have to say. Other than he also mentions the despondent. Doesn't that mean like the depressed, the sad?
Yeah, why do you think? Let me ask this: what's the significance? Like, we know why we feed the poor. What's the significance of feeding the despondent? Yeah, those who are depressed, those who are sad.
Well, I know personally that eating makes me happy.
The genius is, it's not just you, right? God designed the system that, okay, think of this. You're going to go to the restaurant and have your favorite burger. Okay, that entire time when you know, hey, I'm going to head over, say, to In-N-Out, or I don't know what's in your guys' vicinity. You're thinking about that. You're savoring it. You're so, like, your mouth is getting ready. You're anticipating it. You have all this uplift. And then the second when you see that food, you smell it, right? Even if you're in a state of depression, your body can't help, but this is just the way that we're designed. You're going to get a sense of a dopamine rush. You're going to get serotonin. You're going to feel good. You're going to have that moment of, bliss. And the thing is, there's this concept. There's a book that was written years ago. It's called Molecules of Emotion. What they found is anytime we have an emotion, our body releases these peptides. They're like, short proteins. And each cell has receptors for the given proteins for whatever emotion it is that we feel. When the cells replicate, whatever emotion that we feel more of, it's going to have more receptors for that emotion. Right? So depression becomes an aspect where it becomes a physiological ailment after, if you're depressed for long enough, literally your physiology needs to shift. It needs to change. It's like you haven't worked out, you need to start going to the gym. But the way that this physiology changes by having moments of happiness. It becomes self-fulfilling. The more happy you are, the more happy you're going to be. The more sad you are, the more sad you're going to be. And part of this also has to do with confirmation bias, where we're going to gravitate towards whatever belief or understanding we have. If I think that this world is a depressed, sad, lonely place, I'm going to see that everywhere. If I think that, no, this world is full of blessings and joy and bliss, I'm going to see that everywhere. Right? And it's like, by giving someone who's depressed food, tasty food, it's the most simple medicine to change their mood, to change them from being sad to being happy.
It also makes you more hopeful too, especially like because I was homeless once and meals were really hard to come by. And when they did, it just made me feel more hopeful during eating it. Hopeful for that another meal will come. It just many different feelings and thoughts that you experience once you've gone. You're depressed, you're homeless, you're hot, you're living in the elements, and you're hungry. You're just like, it feels like your stomach's eating itself, and then you get that meal. It is quite an awesome experience, and in that moment, you just feel this high sense of appreciation.
Please, Connie, I have a question. Verse 34. Oh, Brother Abraham, you wanted to speak, right? Maybe you can ask a question before I ask you.
Elham, you around? You want to ask the question? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, this verse 26, it says, you shall not idolize any other god besides me, and purify my shrine for those who visit it. I was just curious about the commandment to purify the shrine, because usually that indicates that it may not be pure. So I just wanted to get people's insights on that, right? Like if the Kaaba was established or built on the basis of righteousness, what is there necessarily to purify? Yeah.
Well, we know in the past, right, that the Quraysh were fallen into to paganism, to idol worship. So that's one realm of purification. But even today, as we see, right, it's the Kaaba is not dedicated to God alone. The Hajj is not dedicated to God alone. The Adhan is not dedicated to God alone. The Salat is not dedicated to God alone. The Shahada is not dedicated to God alone. And this all takes place at the Kaaba, the ancient shrine. So I do see that it's an obligation for true believers to remove all forms of idolatry from this sacred house. Um, and it is kind of symbolic because if your headquarters is full of shirk, what about the rest of the congregation, right? Whoever is in charge of that locale, yeah, the responsibility is huge. And the fact that they've negated it and they've allowed all forms of idolatry to infiltrate the religion, is a huge sin they're going to have to carry. Randy, do you want to read your comment, the one that you just put in the chat?
No, I should be the one to ask my question.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. Before I go to my own question, this verse 26, I think what the Saudi Arabian leaders or those who are in charge of Kaaba are doing now, they are in total disobedience to God's command in this verse. Because God is talking about, I don't know, is it that they do not realize that they are, just like you said, Brother Jude, is it that they do not realize that they are committing idol worship, putting Muhammad's name next to God in their places of worship? Because God is talking about, purification of this Kaaba for those who visit it, right? So if they pollute it with idol worship, that means they nullify all the works of the people because they are the ones who lead the congregation of prayers and everything there. Even though when I went for Hajj, I did not go with them in anything they do. Praise God, we were about 5 submitters, or 5 or 4 that we went for the Hajj pilgrimage that time. We were doing our things collectively together after they do their own idol worship. So to look at it clearly, they have polluted their worship, everything they do there, because they are not meeting up with God's commands here. We as we learn. Okay, my question in verse 34, I want somebody to clarify verse 34 for me. For each congregation, we have the creed rites where they commemorate the name of God for providing them with the livestock. Who are these different congregations? For each congregation, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
What's interesting is if you look at just on the historical account, every religion, Abrahamic religion, had this aspect of sacrifice. So the Jews had it at the temple. Jesus basically propagated it. The later Christians stepped away from it, but the only one that's currently still putting it into practice are the followers of the Quran. So it is something that's like we see was one of the rights of the religion of Abraham.
Can't hear you again, Peter.
No, I was just saying that this is the offering of a sacrificial animal is something that we find in the previous scriptures that was attributed to the individuals who are from the religion of Abraham. So the Jews did sacrifice. I don't want to use the term Christian, but Jesus and his actual followers, performed these acts. But the only one that's currently doing it are the followers of the Quran.
Does it mean that all of them before Muhammad came, all these prophets from after Abraham, they all came to Hajj in Mecca to observe all these rites, and they were given different ones, different from what we do today?
TBD. I mean, I do think that there is indication inside the Bible and in the Quran for Moses, basically performing the Hajj. But then the question is post Moses, did they continue with that practice? I can't say definitively because it's for each congregation we have given them different rights. So what was the exact rights for them? Because one of the things that is fascinating is there is Jewish scholars who acknowledge that this was a sacred site from Abraham. One thing that's like interesting is if you look, the Jews who do, I don't know what the practice, but when they do their contact per salat, they put this black cube on their head and they wrap this leather strap around their arm 7 times. And the parallel between that and the Kaaba circumambulating it 7 times is very interesting. Where did this come from? But also, if you look, so when Moses goes to Midian, his father-in-law says, "If you work for me for 7 pilgrimages," and the term there is Hajj. And this is in Midian, which is the Arabia. And then also, if you look in the Bible where it says Moses talks to Pharaoh, he says, "Let the children of Israel go, that we may go to the wilderness." And the term for the wilderness is the desert, right? And there's even some connections there again with Hajj. So yeah. I mean, we do have some remnants. It's just from Moses to Muhammad, we really don't have good documentation. But according to the Quran, it does seem they all performed the salat. But what their Hajj consisted of, it's not to say that it had to be the exact same as what Abraham did, because again, it says that for each congregation they have different rights, and this is also specified in I want to say 548, where it doesn't have to necessarily be 100% with what Abraham did. Yeah.
Thank you. May God increase us in knowledge and wisdom. Thank you.
Anyone else want to comment regarding the verses? Those are 22 verse 23. Oh, sorry, the 26 through 37. One thing that's worth mentioning is this concept where all our religious practices. So we're talking about Hajj, we're talking about Salat, we're talking about I am fasting, Zakat. All these came from Abraham. When God tells Muhammad, follow Millat Ibrahim, the religion of Abraham, Hanif, that's where all these practices come from. And if you look, what the submission consists of is really 2 components. One is this manasik, these rites from Abraham, these physical practices that were passed down from Abraham through the generations. And the other one is the Furqan, the book of law, which is the Quran. When you fuse these 2 things together, you have the religion of submission that we have today. So any of these practices, they all came from Abraham. No one had to teach anyone afterwards these practices. Like you don't have an example where a messenger is taught how to do the salat or give the zakat, because it's already in practice. All they need to do is to purify it, just like that the Kaaba. Like it's already there, it's established. You just have to purify it.
I have a comment. I'm still stuck on the despondent. So like something that's keeps kind of like crossing my mind is, you know, not only does feeding the despondent give them their, you know, their feelings of happiness and amongst other feelings, but I think it would be safe to say that it would also maybe kind of help them refrain from committing certain sinful acts like stealing and manipulating and, you know, doing drugs and things like that.
Sister, I think there are poor people in the needy in every part of the world. And converting into Mecca for Hajj, and with all the people coming and this decree of animal sacrifices on them, God decrees that part of this meat should be given to the poor and the needy. God wants to, you know, help them sustain, you know, their needs, what they have been suffering through poverty, and you know, the over 2 million people, you know, putting together all their, you know, charitable acts or meat or whatever that they have to donate to the ancient shrine for the poor and the needy to enjoy. I think this is God's blessings upon the needy. This period of Hajj is really a period that the poor and the needy is maybe in Saudi Arabia or in Mecca, you know, enjoy certain privileges because of this decree. I think it helps a lot. Imagine in each country of the world at a particular period, God would, you know, ask people to put all their charitable things together and for the needy to benefit. You know, especially the Muslims, if you look at, they are more stingy. Even when God is saying, give God a loan of righteousness for it to be multiplied for you manifold. If you look at the society today, the Muslims are more stingy than other religions. So God wants us to purify our souls. God wants us to take a lot of credit, you know, by doing these acts of charity to feed the poor and the needy. Thank you. Brother Dude, I was able to see in verse 67 of the same Surah 22, the same word that says, for each congregation we have decreed a set of rights, you know, that they may uphold. Therefore, they should not dispute with you. You shall continue to invite everyone to your Lord. Most assuredly, you are unharmed. You see the same verse again telling us about different rights for all these people. Maybe the way the Christians, not the Christians, since we don't recognize them, the followers of Jesus, Moses, have their own different rights in observing certain commandments. You know, uh, not definitely maybe salat or other things, but certain acts of righteousness, things like that. They differ from what God has decreed for them to observe, and we have our own ways of righteousness, certain rights that God has, you know, asked us to observe. Maybe these are some of the things that God is talking about. I don't know.
Great insight. It is parallel each other, similar to 548 as well. God willing, I can put those into the chat. But I just want to say, yeah, if you know, if everyone has anything that they want to contribute to this Quran study, consider it. You know, striving in the cause of God, to share your thoughts, and even small reflections. You don't know, you might say the right thing, and it's gonna trigger someone to a deeper insight on something that they might have not seen before. But yeah, if anyone has anything they want to share, even if they think it's, oh, this is small, you never know. It might have a big impact on someone else.
Did you say that we can mention some things in the previous verses that we read last week?
Yeah.
Okay. I also missed a little portion of that as well last week. So the Zoroastrians, I've never heard of them previously until I read the Quran. And we don't, like, do we know, like, much information on them? Like, as far as I knew, it was, like, you know, Muslims, Jewish, Christians, but, like, yeah, I had never heard about these before. Like, do we know who their messenger was? And
Zoroaster. Yeah, there's I mean, we can't say how accurate all the information is. But what's interesting is they have Salat. They do the ablution just like we do. They have this
Wow.
concept of duality, so they believe in like a jinn companion. They do have the concept of a supreme being, Huruza Mazda. But they also say that there is a kind of an equivalent force where they call Satan. Part of it, though, if you look, so in the it's a Persian religion. It's like from 500 BC, around that time period. But what's interesting too is if you look at like the nativity story according to Matthew, they have the three magi, right? Magi, if you look, it's the same word that's used here in the Quran, are Zoroastrians. Basically, this was their religion of kind of monotheism. There's debates if this is, you know, one of God's actual religions, because in this verse it also calls out the idol worshippers. I personally believe it was, from what I've looked into. But yeah, it is one of these things where we have some information, but again, we have to be skeptical because it's not like we have their intact scripture, right? We have kind of what's being attributed to them and stuff.
let's see.
I wanted to talk a little bit about like go back a little bit on like the food we eat and that something has to die, right? Is that we all know that fact, but because like I mean, if you live in the city, you're not going to see a chicken for miles, right? Like or a goat or whatever, and things like that. But yeah, I was just I was just imagining that in my head where okay, every morning you wake up, you know, you got to go out, you got to feed your goat, you got to take it to a different part of the field, and every day you spend time with it, and you see it do things, and you know it does silly things, or you know, it's almost like a pet basically, and then the time reaches where you know you guys decide, okay, it's time for some meat, and then you take it out, and chances are, like especially if you're like a child, you know, like a younger person, like you've probably given it a name, you know, and like as kids, like you get bored, like you play with things, and one of the things you play with is the animal. You play with the animal, you bring it some food, it eats some food from you, and you know you pet it and this and that, and then you have to take its life. You know, like I don't know if this is equivalent. I would say it's similar, but like if you have like a pet cat or a dog, but you never imagine eating a pet or a dog, right? That's not something, well, at least not for like Western culture, but it'd be something similar, right? But I guess you don't get a pet to with the intention that I'm going to eat this one day. So there is that difference, right? You take it as like, oh, this is going to be like a companion until it or I pass away, kind of a thing. But yeah, there's that. That's why, like, God willing, like a big goal of mine is to go hunting one day, because I do want to experience that process of you know finding the animal and taking its life and then having to harvest. I think it's a very good experience, and I would definitely, if I ever have children, God willing, take them to something similar, either hunting or to a farm. You know, at a certain age, and just let them witness, like, yeah, you know, take them to the petting zoo first, and take them to the slaughterhouse, and like, you know, and just show like this is life, this is the circle of life. because it's like plants. It's not the same, right? Plants are not the same. Animals, they have children, they have offspring. They, you know, like it's really different, which kind of makes sense why it's the prohibitions with the dietary stuff. It's about animals sacrificed in the name of the. I remember listening to that audio where Rashad says, like, he was talking about like why you have to mention God's name. It's because you're getting permission from the Creator to take a life. And a part of me was like, well, what about like plants? You're taking those lives. But if we're being honest with ourselves, like a plant life and an animal life, they're both lives. Don't get me wrong. You know, plants are things and whatnot, but it's just vastly different. Like animals are much closer to us in life than a plant would be, right? We have pretty much the same things like cardiovascular systems, you know, nervous systems, lymphatic systems, muscles, tissues, fats, heart, lungs, kidneys. We have all the same organs, mind you, different sizes and whatnot, but for more or less it's the same. What do we share with a plant? We don't have chlorophyll, we don't have cellulose, right? We don't have offspring like plants do. With animals we do. Like, you know, like as humans, the process of reproduction is the same. The process of conception is the same. You know, a lot of animals they have to they like, you know, the cow, the goat, whatever, provides milk for the offspring until it's old enough, and then things like this. So it's very similar in life. So
Yeah, so growing up on a farm, there's a huge difference between your pets and your animals. Even though as a child, I had, like for instance, I had rabbits, right? Like I would show rabbits like as like 4-H. So I would go out and I would actually show the rabbits. I would put water bottles in so they built up their shoulders. I would play with them and stuff. But at the end of the season, I knew that it was going to be they would be eaten. Right. So it's a totally different understanding you have for these animals, but you still have to have this like respect for them. Right. It is really great for children to see this and go through this. And I never felt like oh my gosh, this was my pet deer and my grandpa just killed it and made sausage, right? I knew that that was the purpose for those particular animals, whereas we understand the purpose for our pets is companionship, right? So there's a difference that you do learn, and very invaluable lessons I learned as a child growing up on a farm. So if you ever do have children, do take them to experience that, or get them a animal that you're going to slaughter eventually and let them raise it. So they learn about that. They learn about death. They learn about the circle of life. And they also learn appreciation for God and his majesty of what he has given us and how to respect what he has given us, not just by saying Bismillah when we eat, but about how to bring the animal up, how to raise that animal, that it is going to be your sustenance at a later date. Yeah, it's a really interesting and valuable lesson for anybody to learn. I highly recommend it if you have the opportunity to even just raise some chickens in your backyard or whatever, and then take them to slaughter or slaughter them yourself. Right? Same thing with fishing. Right? If you go fishing and you catch a fish and you slaughter it, it's the same situation.
Anyone else want to share their beautiful insights on these verses? This topic at hand. I know there must be, because I see a lot of photos of people sharing their food. So
I like
You know what?
33:7. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, one thing that I think a lot of people take for granted is the fact that, yeah, by God's leave, having a messenger that clarifies these things, it eliminates a lot of disputes. And I can tell you, you know, years ago, this was considered unfathomable. How are people going to twist the meaning of the Quran? You know, the Arabic is clear, this and that. Yet you look today, you know, 30 years after the death of the or the martyrdom of the messenger, that people are saying that the word Hajj isn't actually pilgrimage. It's just getting together and arguing because it comes from the same root as to argue. If you told someone, I mean, even today, you tell someone, "Hey, this is what some Quranists believe what Hajj is," they're gonna be in disbelief. They don't believe you. They can't fathom how someone can go so far off from the text of the Quran. And we're having a discussion yesterday with someone who's a pseudo Quranist, a Sunni light, has some interest in submission, and he we were explaining to him, like, look, we don't have these issues. We're not there trying to deconstruct the meaning of these words to come up with some esoteric meaning. We're taking it. If we have any question, we say, look, we have God's messenger. He translated this Quran, and we can move on to the next topic. And just what a blessing that is, because if you look in the Quranist circles, it's infinite permutations of understandings. You got a guy coming and saying, look, sun doesn't mean sun, moon doesn't mean moon, woman doesn't mean woman, man doesn't mean man. Every word has a some esoteric understanding. Randy, were you going to make a comment?
Me? Oh, I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
saw your mic.
Sorry.
All good.
I felt really bad about that.
I wanted to comment a little more on that too. Because so like the way I became a submitter, I was following Sunni Islam because I didn't know anything else. I read the Quran after a period of time, right? I was like about 19 or 20, and I read the Quran, and I loved the wisdom that was evident in the book was amazing. It was the things that I had learned just through life experience, and I was like just taken aback that, like, wow, like this thing is giving such amazing advice, right? Like just the wisdom. So anyway, I read the Quran. It was an amazing book, and I was like, okay, I need to follow this book. So obviously the Muslims follow this book, so let me go do that thing. And then came the contradictions of Hadith and Sunnah and all this stuff, and I was battling between like following the Quran alone and the Sunnah for like about a year, and I can attest firsthand, like I could in a lot of things. Hey, how do you do ablution? Right here. How do you know how many times are there to pray? Well, here are the timings for the prayers. It says pray at this time and this time and this time, and there's 5, so there you go. And stuff like this. But there were just certain aspects of it that I didn't know how to extract that information, or how to with confidence say, yeah, this is the way it is, right? So when submission came along in Code 19 and God's Messenger, it just it was such a weight off my shoulders, because it's like, okay, thank God I have the answers, and not just that, you can have answers, but you can't have certainty, right? Like any Quran is saying, well, I'm certain about my answer. I think they're just lying to themselves, to be honest. I don't think it's, or it's just they've convinced themselves this is the answer, so that's why they feel certain. But no, it was always like, how do I know for certain this is the answer? How do I know for certain? And yeah, it's an amazing blessing to have an answer and know for certain that, hey, yeah, this is correct.
You say that last thing, the last sentence again?
Yeah, it's just it's such a relief and a blessing to not only have an answer, but know for certain that it is correct. Like, okay, Hajj is this, and I'm not saying that because, well, what else could it be, right? Kind of the thing. Like I know for a fact Hajj is this practice, right? I know for a fact Salat is this practice. I know for a fact Zakat is this specific practice in the mouth. I don't have to guess or wonder, is this possibly an influence left by traditional Islam? Because that's always the thing they say, is like you have baggage from traditional Islam, because where can you find details of that you know for sure it's like this in the Quran and things like this. And yeah, it's a little bit tough to answer unless you have the wisdom on how to specifically extract it. And then on top of that, even if you had the wisdom, how do you know for certain? Well, we have a messenger, and here's code 19.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a guessing game. It's not conjecture. It's like, look, God has a system. The only, human beings who are given authority are messengers, in the sense of religious decrees. And all they're doing is they're not a legislator, they're not creating laws, right? Unless they're a prophet, they have no authority to create laws. All they can do is explain how the law is to be applied. That's it. Very simple. The same discussion we're having yesterday, the guy kept saying, like, hey, what's the difference between this and the hadith? Like, look, the hadith is not a clarification on the Quran. It's a secondary source of law. I wanted to make a comment regarding verse 30 because I think this is it's really interesting. It says, all livestock is made lawful for your food, except for those specifically prohibited for you. And then it says, you shall avoid the abomination of idol worship and avoid bearing false witness. So what's the connection here? Right? What does dietary prohibitions have to do with idol worship and avoiding bearing false witness? There's a very simple litmus test. You can tell. Like I didn't really appreciate this until recently. Why does God even have dietary prohibitions? Right? I mean, there's plenty of food out there that's bad for us. But there's 4 specific ones that are mentioned that God says these are haram, that if you eat these, you consume these, you will be committing a sin. And someone can say, like, look, that's a silly thing. Like, why does God care? Or why can't we just use our common sense and dictate what to eat and what to not to eat? And the thing is, this is a very simple method to determine how corrupt the religion has become. Okay, there was this, I want to draw this parallel. There was a famous rock band, and they had instructions. Anytime that they would perform a show, they would rent, they would get booked for some concert hall. They literally had this huge manual of all the requirements they had for the performance because they have all this pyrotechnics, they have, amplifiers, they need certain wattage, they have all these requirements, and it's very, very detailed. Okay. And inside this gigantic manual, they have one line that says, look, in the backstage, you need to have a bowl of M&Ms and all the brown M&Ms have to be removed. Okay, it's a tedious thing. And what's funny is people, they always said, oh, this band, they're a bunch of prima donnas. Look at how trivial they are. They're telling us they need brown M&Ms removed from their candy bowl. Like, who can tell the difference? This and that. So this was always kind of used against them for decades. And one day they were asked about this in an interview, and they said, look, there's no way I can go through and validate every single thing to see if they actually followed this manual or not. But what we did is we put this clause, this M&M clause, and all I need to do is I go backstage, I look in the bowl of M&Ms, and if I see brown M&Ms, I say, okay, didn't follow the instructions. I don't need to look at anything else. Right? And I feel like the dietary prohibitions is that use case for us, for any Muslim. You come and you say, look, you guys believe you follow the Quran alone. Okay, here's the most definitive verse in the entire Quran, 6:145. There cannot be any more dietary prohibitions beyond this 4. It says, I do not find in the Wahi, the revelations given to me, any food that is prohibited for anyone who eats food. This is all encompassing, right? And it gives you 4 things: carrion, running blood, the meat of pigs, and animals sacrificed other than God. That's it. If someone comes and says, hey, you know what? Donkey meat is prohibited. I say, okay, you're following a different religion. Who gave you that dietary prohibition? Okay. Someone comes and says, no, you know what? Certain crustaceans are prohibited. I say, okay, you're not following the religion of God. I don't need to know anything else about your faith at this point, right? You've already signified with your, non-removal of brown M&Ms that you have followed a different God next to God. That's why, like, consistently in the Quran, it ties these concepts with idol worship. Right, so if you look like 6:121, I'm going to just put it in really quick. It says, do not eat from that upon which the name of God has not been mentioned, for it is an abomination. The devils inspired their allies to argue with you. If you obey them, you will be idol worshippers. Meaning God gives you a command, say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before you eat. Someone else comes and says, no, don't say that. Say this other thing. If you take that other advice over God's advice, you've just set up a God beside God because that other source has no authority. Right? We have 931. They have set up their religious leaders and scholars as lords instead of God. How do they do this? You know, who's there worshiping their religious leaders and scholars? You ask anyone, do you worship them? They say no. But the way they do that is that they're taking their word over God's word. You've just set up a partner with God, right? And then the last one I want to share is 6:19. It says, say, whose testimony is the greatest, right? We have the Quran. This is God's testimony for mankind. Hey, God's. He is the witness between me and you that this Quran has been inspired to me to preach it to you and whomever reaches. It says, indeed, you bear witness there's other gods beside God. How did they do that? The second they set up a secondary source next to the Quran that has no authority, they've set up a partner with God. Say, I do not testify as you do. There's only one God, and I disown your idolatry. Right? So praise God, it's such a simple thing. Like I really didn't appreciate this as much, but having these debates with the Sunnis, the traditionalists and stuff, and just saying, hey, what's your dietary prohibitions? Right? I don't need to know anything else. You explain to me your dietary prohibitions, and the second they go beyond 4, then you know they've set up another God beside God. Sorry for the long-winded response.
Perhaps perhaps this is also the wisdom behind I think it's in Surah 9 where it says, and it's interesting, the criterion to like make them as brethren in faith to us was like there's salat and there's zakat. If they observe the contact prayer salat and give the obligatory charity zakat, then they are your brethren in faith, right? Because if they're doing the salat correctly, then the shahada is also correct, right? And there's this understanding that you're not supposed to add any other names next to God. So there's a correct understanding of the monotheism. And then the zakat, I'm guessing is like as a means of purification that they seek to become purified, right? They're doing the bare minimum to want to purify themselves and their ego and their stinginess and selfishness from in order, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Hey, should we go into announcements and then get back to the study afterwards?
Let's
So,
do it.
yeah, if anyone has any announcements they want to make regarding things that they've worked on in the past week or are currently working on, this is a good time to bring it up. Is Brother Salami on? I know he's working on something.
His brother, yes.
Yeah, do you want to share that, brother?
Yes, thanks so much. Peace be upon you, everyone. By
Peace.
God's grace, we are starting a new project called Reach 19. And the aim is we are trying to reach people who influence others on YouTube, like in their college professors and whoever you think it would fit to spread the message, right? We are trying to search their public emails and write it down and collect them, and when it hits 100 emails, we are just gonna send it one message that tailored for them specifically. You can imagine like this is an email campaign, okay? And I shared the link in VC1-chat. We already found 40 different emails that we think that they are important to send the email and they might look at it. If you have time that you can like sometimes sit down and search people who influence others and find their public emails, you just share it with us, God willing, in Reach 19 project channel. God bless you all.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? So, if I'm understanding this correctly, the goal of the project is to find potentially influential people that may have a larger reach and get their emails so that we can make custom emails of maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 submitters writing emails at a time and do like one person, I don't know, a week or something like that, or maybe all at once. So the whole point is to mass email these people in hopes to reach and make a connection. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, God, I have a couple of people in mind, God willing.
Perfect.
Eddie Buxel.
Who cares about that guy, man? I don't think much progress. I was honestly
Just-
thinking of there are a couple of songwriters. They make zikr, and they use instrumentals, right? Which is often frowned upon in the Islamic community. There's one guy, Dawood Warnsby, very fantastic zikr. I've played it a few times, and he has, out of all the people that I've heard make zikr, his zikr commemoration has been like there's a lot that's centered around God alone. That's not centered around idol worship and idolizing Muhammad. Dawood Warnsby. I think I have his email address because one time I sent him some money and like on Spotify, you can support an artist kind of a thing. And the guy was kind enough, like he actually responded personally with a thank you, and I think we had a little bit of an exchange, but then that was it. There's another guy, Nader Khan. He's also pretty good, although he does have some stuff about Muhammad. But he still plays like the drums and music, and he does a lot of like work with disabled people and ill people, and he'll do commemoration music for them. That's something he likes to do. So I feel like these are very good-hearted, kind-hearted people, and they love to worship God, and they're also in an industry doing something that is very restrictive and stunted because of the musical limitations that the Islamic community puts upon it, right? So those are definitely two people I would love to mass email and reach out to. It would be amazing.
If you can share their name and email in the chat, it would be nice, the Reach 19 project chat, because if we can keep track of the people we are emailing in the sheet that we made, we can avoid, contacting the same person multiple times, because it might backfire if they feel repeatedly disturbed. You send it to someone and I send it to someone without knowing each other. That would be.
Does anyone else want to add a update or something that they've been either working on or they've done or they're working on?
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, please, Sister Rose, go ahead.
I was just going to remind everybody we're going to do the second watching of Rashad's next video this Wednesday, 6 p.m. my time. And then AAA will do a repeat of it later in the evening for those who cannot come to the one that I do earlier. So I think these are really beneficial. For me, I know I have not gone through all of the MOC's speeches and Quran studies and stuff like that. So we're hitting we're doing the speeches first, right? The Friday sermons first. Then we'll, God willing, go into the actual Quran studies. And then after that, I'd like us to read through the prospectus together. So hopefully this will be an ongoing situation every other Wednesday until we have completed the compilation of all of the messengers left behind videos and messages and so on and so forth. The last one was a little short because was God is running everything. There's not a whole lot to discuss with that one. But God willing, they'll get a little bit deeper, and it's nice to see the progression of his revelation. So if you guys are interested, please do sign up for that and attend. And make sure if you do attend that you are willing to participate, because participation just makes it better for everybody. That's all I have. Thank
Beautiful. Peace, guys. Peace and blessings upon everyone. So this is something that I've been working on. This is a screenshot that I have for about a month ago. My tablet that just to like get ideas down in my head. But I'm basically trying to structure the how to break down Code 19 and its effects throughout the Quran. How it starts with the most basic counts, and then it goes layered and layered and layered, and we can see the process of purification from the words, the recitations, to the halves, to the letters, to the words, word count, etc., all the way, and then creating enough or coincidences that eventually, when you tie it in with Rashad Khalifa, it's like, well, how could you deny so much consistency? You know, with his name tied into the Quran, his numerical value, and then his life, his masjid, etc. This is kind of like what I'm working on. I'm taking a lot of stuff that stole posts on the math chat and the what's the other one? Math chat, and then basically all the math miracles that have appeared that he continues to find throughout the Quran, and kind of like utilizing a lot of that information, taking screenshots, finding a way to like make it digestible and not overwhelm someone, but so someone can see like, man, it gets to a point that it's so overwhelmingly obvious that how do you reject this? So it's the most nuanced, difficult part is structuring it, layering it in a way that's not biased, and it's more a progressive nature of how to use Code 19 to purify the Quran. So I guess to you guys, if you guys come across any information, any ideas, any things, like obviously I just take everything and I save it in, and then I just start finding ways to organize it. That's about it.
Peace upon you. I think I'm also working something to that similar. I think that it's not. It all started with something that in our video that we were preparing a text for. It was for the 2 added verses, and that led me to look into the different recitations, the qira'ats, the hafs and warsh, and also ended up asking some question for Peter, and then following up with some with the Sana Quran. And so it was interesting because that led me to some new information. And well, it's not new, but so I found it interesting because the text was more different than the Qurans that everybody has. And but interestingly enough, you can use the Code 19 to recognize the wrong and the right one. So which I'm writing a Persian text or in a Persian video, but eventually I can share the text in English with you if you want. Send me a message, and then I can translate it and send it to you. So you can also look at some of the website that I worked on. I looked at when I was doing the comparison. This is about the lower text of Sana Quran.
Yeah, no, that'd be perfect. I'm willing. Yeah, because that's also the intention. Right now, it's making like a PDF or a written version, and then God willing, turn it into something digestible. You know, like one of Jonathan's videos or Salami's videos, which are like so well structured. So I'm trying to cut out this part of the work, and then seeing, you know, where it goes from there.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, that's my intention, was to actually look at use the code and then use each, because there are websites that they try to paint this picture that you know, the Quran is not preserved. They take some of these texts from the lower language that was originally documented by 2 Iranians, and they basically go over it. Obviously, this is not a full Quran, but nonetheless, they were making these arguments. And obviously, the traditional didn't have any argument back against the big variations. But interestingly, the Code 19 reconciles them clearly, because I've looked at in all of them, it's either the differences that were identified were either in a Surah Baqarah, which is we get the Aleph Lam Mim, and then it's either the Mim or Aleph or Lam that is different. And then in the other surahs, like Surah 9 and others, the differences were identified by the variations in the numbers of Allah, because in all of the cases, variation Allah or Rasul or something, or something that you could reconcile it with the Code 19, even though they weren't in the initiated surahs. So it was interesting, the differences. that we could use code 19 to reconcile which one is the correct one.
You know, I wanted to ask if you've reached this similar conclusion, but I've also noticed that the Warsh itself also has many variations of code 19, even though it has a different amount of counts and different amount of verses and the way that it's split, different organization. And one of the reasonings that I concluded is that whichever version of the Quran has the most amount of combinations of code 19, or, you know, not just combinations, but like layered upon layered upon layered, like exponentially layered, then it makes it the most true. And so that's how we get to the halves, because there's more combinations of code 19 in the halves. And this is kind of like where I'm at right now in this frame of thinking as I present this idea. I don't know if you've come across similar examples.
The idea is that we pick, because some people argue, you know, there are some variations that cannot be reconciled with the code. But when you look at a recitation as a whole, and you recognize that if you take a different recitations, a lot of these phenomena will disappear simply. And if you take another recitation selectively, you still run to a lot of problems. So you have to, the approach is that we recognize one recitation to be the most accurate one. And within that recitations, we use the code to address anything that was disputable. And I think my original idea was because I read somewhere that the Sana does not have the full to 128, 129 is not fully shown, and it's true. It's not. It's half of it is available there. It's not the whole thing, and so that's what I was going to add. But then I come across all the other variations that it was very interesting. So yeah, the idea is that we're trying to find the one that that's the closest to the code, and then this would be the correct recitation. This would be the correct or the most accurate one to the one that was revealed by Prophet Muhammad. And the other ones is basically either scribal errors or written errors or people changes, you know, other things that, you know, it could be associated with it.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
guys.
no, that's beautiful.
Yeah, would you guys be good like syncing up after study? I mean, that's kind of the function, so people know what each other's working on, and we can regroup and you know,
Yeah.
take it to that next stage, inshallah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't, yeah.
Inshallah.
Hey, Peter, I have a quick question for you, just because I have to ask it now or I'll forget later. Do we have any kind of documentation on the messenger's spendings? Because we had somebody come in, they're pretty open to the message, but they're not understanding Rashad being a messenger. Then we go through the criteria set forth in the he was having an issue with the portion on collecting no wage, because we do know that Rashad did sell things. Do we have any kind of accounting documentation of that he actually didn't make any profit?
To me, it's like, not that I know, but I mean, look at what he's selling goods, right? And he's not like he's selling these at a profit. We have expressions of him saying, like, regarding like the submitter's perspectives, that because he wasn't making money, he was going to only send it to people who were genuinely interested. And then it just happened that the printing company made a mistake and they double printed it, right? So he ended up sending it to everyone. I mean, there's no question that he's not making like a money on this. If his intent was to make money, right, he could have done that without declaring messengership or anything of this nature. I mean, by all means, if someone's making the argument, you can direct them towards me. I'll have the conversation with them. It's like, it's yeah. I mean, that's just such a silly argument.
Yeah, God willing. I just wanted to know if we had something that we could possibly put in the read only or something to direct people to if that does come up again, just as a easy, well, here's the documentation or the whatever it is that we would maybe able to have to counter that argument. That's all. Thank you. Praise God.
Anyone else want to share any updates?
Sister Rose, perhaps you can get a hold of Master Tucson and the prices that they were issuing. Some of the contemporaries will have more information. Maybe Brother Douglas has. I'm not
We
sure.
have. I mean, we have document like for from his newsletters, and then same thing from the back of the Quran, like what the prices were for these things, right? I mean, you can go do the math, see like the printing, say for the hardcover Quran, like what that would cost at that time and place, let alone the shipping cost. And he's not making a profit from this. I mean, to me, it's such a nefarious kind of argument. Like, bro, if you wanted to make money, it's like you wouldn't
I
be
agree.
making these controversial claims and stuff like that. He would have just been towing the Sunni party line and
Right.
yeah,
I
banked off
agree. I
that.
agree. I do have one more announcement. Sister Nita did book the room for Friday and Saturday. Praise God. Thank you, Sister Nita, for the New York meetup. I'm going to put a poll in, God willing, VC1. If you are coming, we did this poll earlier in the week, but I just don't think a lot of people saw it. If you're coming, yes. Not coming for sure. No. If you are part of the New York community, please do not take part in this poll. We're trying to see how many people on top of the New York community is coming. So I'm going to put that in God willing so that we can get a firm number for if we decide to do catering or any of those things. But we do have the actual room set up. We're going to have it all day Friday and all day Saturday. That's where we will, God willing, be meeting up for Juma on Friday. If you're in earlier, we can meet up there sooner. And then we will, God willing, after we figure out how many people are actually for sure coming, we can set up the itinerary, and hopefully by next Sunday, God willing, we will have an itinerary that we can post for people to know exactly what the plan is for the meetup.
Anyone else? I'll just give a quick one from my end. I'm updating the depository for the problematic Sahih Hadith to include the narrations from Abu Dawood's book. I'm 4 volumes in that I've updated. I just have to, format and copy and paste the ones from the last volume. But they're all in the Git book. And if you look, we set up another channel, Hadith Criticism. The ones that I found particularly interesting, I put there. That I feel like these ones might warrant either memes or articles on the topic. Um, yeah, if you want to take a look at some of the content there. And then lastly, I posted some of these that came up onto the my Twitter. Some got good responses and whatnot, but yeah, if you guys are here to support some of these tweets against traditional Sunni Islam, look at the last handful that are there in the chat. Anything? AAA, Sajjad. You guys want to talk about the Sajjad's Defin, the podcast? I don't know if they're on. If not, okay, I'll just give a quick update. God, when we're trying to record a weekly podcast, AAA and Sajjad put together a list of topics. I think they got 10 topics for the next 10 weeks. And it's a good way to give the kind of the views of submitters on these various topics is more of just kind of like a group discussion. The idea is that they're going to be holding it every week. But then also we want the participation of other people so they hear, various voices. This week it was they came up with the topic, I guess 30 minutes before, but it was like women in submission, and ironically we didn't have any women speaking on the topic. They were tied up, but I think it came out pretty well. So yeah, God willing, for future weeks, if you guys are around, if you can participate, it's always good to have additional voices.
We have 19 people interested at this moment in that. Praise God.
All right. If not, let's get back to the study. No one else has any other updates they want to share? Any objections? I wanted to address just really quick this the aspect I saw Ars was saying regarding that. Hey, it says 1.5 hours. Honestly, in the past, we always did it an hour in with the announcements, but it's mostly it has to do with just flexibility of the study. If the conversation is persisting, we'll go longer. If it basically seems like it's dwindling, then we'll do the announcements earlier. This is not meant to be set in stone, right? It's not a ritual in that sense where it has to be done this way. So there's flexibility in the sense of whatever appears to get more traction with the group. We just plan accordingly. But again, if we want to go the full hour and a half, by all means, my recommendation, I was saying this from the start, is just comment. If you have comments you want to give regarding the verses, I think that's appropriate. And the reason I didn't want to go on to more verses is because A, there's still comments to be made about these verses. I don't want to neglect them. And then B, it's like if you read a series of verses, you're going to need a good hour and stuff to discuss them. So if you look, verse 38 through 46 would be 48 would be our next batch. So that'd be a lot of verses to try to cover in a short amount of time, which I prefer to go slow and detailed than just blast through the verses.
Brother Rajan brought up a really good suggestion regarding giving us the verses in advance so we can study, reflect, maybe something happens related to them, and then when the Quran study happens, we have more to share regarding to these verses.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's just going to be typically you're looking about like the next 10 verses from wherever we left off. So since we finished at 37, next week will most likely be from 38 through 48 for anyone who's interested.
Yeah, I thought it was sometimes, for some reason, I thought it was random. But yeah, I guess if we let people know in the notification here, we're going to be looking this range of verses, whatever, and then people have better preparation.
Good call. Yeah, good idea. I wanted to make a... Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say we see consistency in verse 26 and Surah 72:18, where it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the places of worship belongs to God, will not call on anyone else besides God or mention anybody. If you read 72:18 down to 20, you will see absolute devotion to God, which Prophet Muhammad also professed or carried out during his lifetime. And this is another verse telling us about you shall not idolize any other beside God, any other God beside me. You see, ascribing partners or mentioning names beside God in the places of worship is tantamount to idol worship. And this is why God is telling us in verse 26 here that we should not idolize any other God beside it. That means the shrine or the Kaaba is truly has to be a place of worship for God alone, or our mosque where we stand to pray to observe the contact prayer salat must be devoted to God alone, and we must not idolize or call on anybody's name, anyone's name beside God in those places of worship. Yeah, thank you.
I want to make a comment regarding 36. This requirement that if someone is slaughtering an animal, they're required to mention God's name upon that animal. This is part of Uhilla. where when you're going to sacrifice an animal, and this is just the taking of life of any animal, that if the person who is doing that act, they have a responsibility to mention God's name. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the dietary prohibition, it doesn't say that if no name is mentioned that that food is prohibited. It specifically says, "Do not eat from that upon which the name of God." Sorry. I'm mixing up the verses. It says, "In animals sacrificed to other than God." Right. So if no name is mentioned, then that's not other than God. So meaning that the food you get, the meat you get from the grocery store is lawful to eat, but there is a sin on that individual if they didn't mention God's name when they sacrificed that animal. Make another comment too. So Hajj is one of the 4 sacred months. And what's interesting is if you talk to the traditionalists, they'll say that basically the 4 sacred months, that 3 of them are consecutive, and then the fourth one is not consecutive, and that these are different than the months for Hajj. But the Quran indicates that the months for Hajj and the sacred months are the same, and that the sacred months are consecutive. It doesn't make sense that you'd. So in Surah 9, verse 1, it says, God has issued herein an ultimatum. And then it says, therefore, roam the earth for 4 months. It doesn't make sense that they would roam the earth for 3 months, take a break, and then roam for the fourth month, and then the agreement is put into to place. This indicates that the 4 months, the 4 sacred months, are consecutive. That the Muslim masses have deteriorated, they've distorted which months are the actual sacred months. An article on that topic. Anyone else have comments or questions regarding the verse, or if they have comments or questions in general regarding any topic related to the Quran? It's a good time to bring it up. So if you've done any of your own studies or reading and you wanted to discuss or bring up a observation or a question, now's a good time for that as well.
Yeah. This what you just said remind me that later in chapter 9 there are warnings from God about how they would crowd out believers in the at the Kaaba and so on. And everything wrong they do in that chapter is done by today's modern uh I guess governing bodies in Saudi Arabia, right? Because in a sense, when you reduce the amount of Hajj, you're crowding people out in one way or another. Just one more way they kind of match that pattern of repelling from God's path, among other things in that in that surah as well.
Isn't that interesting that like literally you can replace the practices of the Quraysh with the modern Sunnis, and they're mimicking each other. It's almost as if their minds are similar. They're doing the exact same thing. They believed in intercession. The Sunnis believe in intercession. They set up other deities beside God. The Sunnis set up other deities beside God. They crowd out the masjid. The Sunnis crowd out the masjid. Like one-to-one comparison.
Yep.
like making lists of all those comparisons and examples, because sometimes when you're telling people, oh, that's a good example, yeah. But when you give them an entire thing to like consider, it's not just one thing. It's like at some point it stops being a coincidence. At some point it stops being a pattern. It becomes a pattern where it helps them recognize the pattern of like, hey, look, you really are behind the movement that promotes idolatry, or you really are promoting, words that are contradicting God's words. Like, this is my constant effort in a lot of these things, is putting all this information, all this knowledge you guys have, and trying to put it together in a digestible way so that people can see. It's like, holy, that's crazy. That's I never saw it from that perspective. It's like trying to give them a different angle to see things. Instead of like being zoomed in into the picture, they can see the entirety of the picture, and then they'll be like, oh, there really is something wrong here. I really am following the wrong, practices or belief or whatever.
Yeah, there's the example that God puts in the Quran is that of Abraham, right? Abraham is debating with his people, trying to show them that, look, these other deities aren't God. And then his kind of last straw is he goes and he destroys the idols and leaves the big one. And when they confront about it, and he says, yeah, the big one did it. It says, for that moment, they recognized within themselves that they were the ones who were astray. Yet they reverted back to their old ways. You know full well that these cannot speak. Right? Meaning that moment of dissonance was their opportunity to correct their action. It's the same thing. Like, I've seen this so many times. A Sunni comes and say, how do Sunnis, commit shirk? And then we go down the list, and they're befuddled. And for that moment, they say they recognize it, and then they go back. Well, the Hadith says X, Y, and Z. It's like, all right, bro. Like, you either see it or you don't. If I tell someone, I say, go inside your masjid, do you see one name or two? And they say two names, right? That should be an epiphany. Why is there two names up on the wall? Why is there not just one name?
It reminds me of that show of it was a chef speaking to a waiter or waitress, and she comes up to the chef and says, hey chef, the gentleman on table 6 is asking for an eggless omelet. And he's like, wait, what? Yeah, he's asking for an eggless omelet. I'm like, but there is no such, it doesn't exist. And she's like, what do you mean? We don't have any? He's like, no, look, if I give you, what are breadsticks made out of? And she goes, bread. Okay, take out the bread. What do you have? Sticks? It's like, no, you're missing that. It's like, there's no many, sometimes some people, no matter how many times you try to guide them towards the river to drink the water, they just don't see it. They're so narrow, and this has to be true. So it's like, it takes a lot of like zooming out to be able to see the bigger picture. And it takes a lot of like, I don't know, this is where I feel like I'm right now with my parents, with my friends, with my neighbors, with my partner. Like, it's there's no zoomed in that it's like, okay, how do I make this more digestible for them to really see what's going on here?
I think everybody faces a moment of like, the truth revealed, and it makes sense. But because, they prefer something that they're familiar with, that they'll just kind of like ignore the fact that it makes logical sense and just dive deeper into their own way. And of course, I'm not saying that they're doomed forever when they do this, but I think that they do kind of just harm themselves. Maybe God, maybe there's a purpose for it. Maybe later on during a certain time of their life, God will put them in a certain situation where they will better accept the message, like it'll come clear to the point where, they have no way of denying it and they're ready to accept it. But I think, obviously a lot of people, will carry be persistent in their, their straying away from the truth. And I really love the hidden secret chapter, in that moment of, like, when the truth comes to, to the person to face the truth, there's this moment of, like, I know the truth. It is, I guess, maybe instinctual, but, he reflected and then he decided. He reflected, but he decided to go on in his own way, his own opinion. Just like when Abraham, when he was making, almost not making fun of these people, but just trying to get them to see, like, how ridiculous what they were doing was totally ridiculous. They did have that moment of, like, clarity, but again, they chose to go on, to go with what they were familiar with.
Yeah, they're sticking to their tradition. It's very hard for people to leave their preconceived notions, their tradition, and the interesting thing. This is always what the messengers do. They come and they purify the religion, and they show that, hey, look, the tradition you guys are upholding is not authorized by God, and it's full of corruption. It's full of distortion, idol worship, innovation, and the people, they just want to cling on to their tradition. The aspect is, though, it's we have to how do you put it? In 494, it says, I always think of this verse. It says, "O you who believe, if you strike in the cause of God, you shall be absolutely sure. And do not say to one who offers you peace, you are not a believer, seeking the spoils of this world, for God possesses infinite spoils." And then this part says, "Remember that you used to be like them, and God blessed you. Therefore, you shall be absolutely sure before you strike. God is fully aware, fully cognizant of everything you do." We have to be conscientious that we there was a time when we were completely astray. But also, it's humbling too. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. Uh, if we don't think that ourself 5 years from now is going to be correcting some of our understandings or viewpoints today, we're being kind of naive. And this just comes with the growth. One of the verses a lot of submitters cite is this aspect where God says that people will move from stage to stage, right? Meaning that this is just part of the process. As long as they're moving in the right direction, that's the part that's important. I have a question. I brought this up, I think it was last week, but I couldn't stick around to hear people's response. What do you think is more important? Utilizing the right process or having the right answer? So let's say, again, we're having a debate on some matter, and is it more important that we have the right understanding regarding whatever that decree or answer is to that question, or is it more important that we utilize the right process? Here's what you guys think.
I would say the process, because with the right process, there's constructive conversations. You can come to the truth together, and you're not repelling people. You can have the right answers, but your behavior is so horrendous that you know you end up just repelling people from the truth, not because they don't like the truth, but because they don't like you. So I think the process is probably more important.
Also, I agree with sister. And can we say this, that God actually emphasizes on that? For example, any subject like slavery, or the in that case, or for example, the drinking. He could have just say not to do those things, but he eliminates, he puts barriers in front of that. It gives more right to the slaves, and it takes the society or community in a direction that they will learn it, they put it into practice, and then they go to one step more and one step more to move the people by understanding it, rather than just giving them yes or no answer and what's right, what's wrong. Can we say that God is actually using that system, that the process we have to go through? Thank you.
Does anyone else want to share their thoughts on this?
I wanted just to add that also, like, with the right process, sometimes there's more than one answer. A lot of times there's more than one answer. There's not always just one answer that fits all, or one size fits all. So, you know, with the right process, you really open yourself up to, like, even if you do have a certain level of understanding, you can increase your understanding just by having the right process and listening and being respectful and going through the rhythm of, like, just good conversation.
I guess I'm confused a little bit by your, so sorry, brother, by your, I think it's most important that we know the information, though, right? Because if we don't have the information, the process won't get you to the truth. So I think, I guess maybe I'm not quite understanding, Brother Peter. Are you trying to say, like, it's more important that we have good conversation and then if we have the correct understanding?
It's not about having good conversation. It's saying, look, you have two choices, right? Imagine envelope number one tells you, okay, this is what the correct process is, but it's not guaranteed to give you the right answer. Okay. The envelope number two is you don't utilize the process of God. You're using some other process, but you get the right answer.
Hmm.
Can you say that
I'm
again,
going to go
brother?
with the right answer. I'm going to go with the right answer for myself.
I think it's both in the Quran, the process and the answer. The example that comes to mind is when God said, do not approach the Salat prayers intoxicated. And initially, God commanded, God revealed to Prophet Muhammad to caution the people about approaching the prayers while intoxicated. Subsequent to that was the commandment not to drink intoxicants. That involves a process because God knows the human nature. God knows the nature of addiction. And if you give a person an answer, for example, do not drink intoxicants, and they hear you dealing with people that in their hearts they want to submit and believe, but they are, so to speak, a hostage to an addiction. In this case, they're addicted to intoxicants. God created a process by which their desire to pray and to submit, they understood and were guided to realize that that's more important than engaging in addiction. And eventually what God did is say, do not drink intoxicants. Thank you. Peace.
I think everything about submission or the submitters has a process. And so doing everything or whatever we have to do, we have to, go through the due process so that we can get it right. Yes. God has taught us in Surah 16, 125 to also follow a process of, communicating or talking to people, in the best possible way. So I think for the submitters, God has guided us, or God is guiding us, because He wants us to be decent. He wants us to be, treated kindly and politely wherever we are. We will be respectful. So everything has a process for a true submitter. Thank you.
I'll share my 2 cents. To me, I think the process, right, is more important than the actual answer that's given. And it reminds me of Surah 3. I think it's the 159 where they say when they consult and they make a decision and they trust in God, meaning that you have to go through that process, right? Even if you come up with what might not be the optimal solution or answer, that because you utilize the process that God has decreed, God is going to make it work out to your favor. But on the flip side, if you don't go by God's process, let's say I'm going to make a unilateral decision and dictate to the masses and this and that, that even if you pick the quote unquote right answer, it's going to backfire against you. And I equate kind of process more to the element of sincerity, right? Think of it this way. If someone is sincere, does that mean that they have the right understanding? No, there is no connection with sincerity and necessarily having the right understanding. But what sincerity will guarantee you is that when you see the right answer, you will adopt it, right? And I see that in the same way that oftentimes there's this temptation to try to cut corners in God's process, because we think it's going to be more efficient, it's going to get us there faster, and this and that. But when we do that, we're inevitably saying we don't trust in God, that we think this other way, this shortcut, is going to be, more fruitful. What do you guys think of that?
I agree 100%. I wrote in the chat, the process is more likely to lead you right than the knowledge, in my opinion. The process is practicing obedience. We show our sincerity to our Creator, God gives. I know people with knowledge, all the right things to say, but lacking in obedience only leads them astray, and their knowledge means nothing. It gets them nowhere. It's like the parrot that just calls out sounds, but not really understanding. Or the donkey that's carrying great literature on their back. I mean, maybe not to the degree of like the Sunnis where they have the Quran and they don't even really read it. They don't even really know what's in the Quran. But in some way, it's almost the same, because you have this book, you're reading it, but you're not putting it into practice. So you're just carrying around this book, and it's not providing you benefit because you're not putting it into practice. You're showing your lack of sincerity. And the sincerity is the key that leads us to attaining the knowledge. And we can sit on the server and we can hear everything that's being said. And I would do Quran studies with other individuals, and I would hear all this information on the server, And like I said, I'd go out and do these Quran studies, and people would say, "Oh my God, like you've only been a submitter this long, and you know all this stuff." And I thought it's because I hear it all day long, but that didn't make me righteous. And I ended up struggling really bad for a while, even though I knew what I knew. It's just you know, these things that you've learned, you have to put them into practice.
Peace. I'd go further. I'd say having the correct understanding is fundamentally impossible without going through the process. Sure, you could understand a simple rule like X is prohibited or Y are prohibited and try to follow the letter of the law, but in that case, you're wholly dependent on what's fundamentally somebody else's interpretation of what's the correct understanding. Pray that that's, as close as it can, but can you actually really understand something without going through the process of living it, of going up and down, like through ideally through God's system? Because that's not necessarily going to lead you to a higher probability of ruin. I would say the other way is much higher probability of ruin. But following God's system, going through the process, this is you have to attain the wisdom. When you attain the wisdom, then your behavior becomes bulletproof. Your faith becomes bulletproof because you just fundamentally understand it. For instance, rather than memorizing 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, so on and so forth, you fundamentally understand how addition works. When you understand how addition works, you can add all the numbers together versus just memorized a few things.
There's a book that I really liked. I only read like maybe 40 pages of it, but it's enough to understand the fundamental truth in it. The book is called Atomic Habits, and it goes back to the most minuscule action, which before you even move a muscle, before you even commit an action, it begins at the thought, right? Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to think? What thoughts do I allow to enter my brain? What thoughts do I entertain? All of this is a decision. And I like that book because it's specifically built around how to change either bad habits, bad beliefs, bad practices, bad things that you don't agree with, that you no longer want to be a part of you. But now you have to deconstruct the neural connections that you've built that have made you who you are now. So if you're an anxious person, if you are a paranoid person, if you're a jealous person, if you're any of these behaviors that you don't fundamentally agree with, whether it's greedy, whether it's and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have to make a conscious choice in order to change. You have to recognize it, and you have to make a conscious choice each and every single time to stop it and choose a better path. And this is what I like heavily regarding Surah 13:11, because God specifically tells us, A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim, he says, I'm going to read the top version before I read Rashad's translation, because I like the way that it's worded here, particularly where it says, for him are successive before and behind him who protect him by the decree of God. Indeed, God will not change the condition of a people until they change what it is within themselves, or what is in themselves. When God intends for people ill, there is no repelling it, there is not for them besides him any patron. The way that Rashad translates it is, shifts take turns staying with each one of you. They're in front of you and behind you. They stay with you and guard you in accordance with God's commands. Thus, God does not change the condition of any people unless they make the decision to change. If God wills for any hardship for any people, no force can stop it, for they have none beside him as Lord and Master. And the emphasis of having to make the decision to change. Many people think, oh, I'm going to be less greedy. Oh, I'm going to, clean the house more. Oh, yes, that matters. But it's the core, the basis of you. And I like to make a lot of parallels to how God works. When he said, be, and the heavens and the earth were created. Well, in that same sense, we function we're not God, obviously, but we function very similar, that when a thought enters our mind, or when we generate a thought, we let that thought create our reality. And whatever thought we entertain, that's what becomes our reality. So if you're going to be like, oh man, these people are traitors, oh man, that's all you're going to become. That's all you're going to be. And so, going to Peter's point, it's the process. That process is every single atomic action we make constitutes our lesson at the end. What message we're going to get from it, how we're going to grow, or how we're going to regress and go further and further from God.
Peace. Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah,
Peace,
yeah, yeah.
brother.
Sorry,
Yes,
sorry. Yeah,
yes.
he's
Okay.
good.
Okay. We know God in the Quran tells us that on the believers there is joy, there is peace. We know the messenger of the covenant, as we know in this platform, that happiness is submission to God alone. There we have the fruit of submission. Submission, in a way of speaking, to God alone is the process, right? And if a person sincerely embraces this process, they will experience true, genuine, real happiness. However, you can program people, teach them, indoctrinate them that there are other means or ways towards happiness. Those that are guided realize that happiness is submission to God. Although we have millions of people who are led to believe they can attain what they think is happiness or what they're told is happiness by other ways. And of course, this is not true. So, with the right process, you get the correct and righteous outcome. And I just wanted to use it as an example. We live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with all kinds of so-called shortcuts, means, and ways towards happiness. And all we could sum it up and say people are selling us the buy-in. The buy-in is that if you accept what I'm telling you, this will make you happy. But of course, we know that happiness is submission to God, obedience, and so that we can redeem our souls. Thank you. Peace.
Yeah, this concept between process and this desire to get the right answer. It reminds me of the example of Satan going to Adam saying, "Hey, I'm giving you sincere advice," and he's offering Adam what it is that he wants. He wants to be immortal. He wants to be able to be an angel. And he's saying, this commandment that God gave you, if you just break this commandment, you're going to get there faster. And I kind of see that in the same way, where the devil's going to come and tempt us and say, hey, you want to have righteousness, you want to get the right answer, you're going to have to do this thing that is sinful, and then afterwards you can be righteous. Afterwards you can, go back to being a good person. And it kind of reminds me of Joseph and his brothers, where they made this concept. They said, look, this Joseph character is giving us a lot of tough time. It would be just so much easier to just get rid of him. So let's go through, take his death, and then we can go back to being righteous. And this is the kind of the Satan's tactic to say, look, don't go through the process. Take this shortcut, commit this sin, and then it's just going to make you being righteous down the road that much easier.
Dude, you mentioned about we know that on Earth, the human being physical, there is a period they live, 40, 50, whatever the length it could be. Case of Noah, I think 950 years, but they die, and the nafs goes back. So when in heaven, so Adam and Eve, they are in a corner of a heaven or someplace up there. And how would Satan come to them if it's only their nafs and it's not in a form of physical being? How would he offer them eternal life, as a receiving eternal life if they do this? Was it in a form that they knew they're going to die? And if that's the case, so what happened to the fact that, we are in these universes, it's created, so it's, in a physical form you could exist, versus in the heaven, we understand it's not a physical form. How would we go understanding that verse that it says he is offering them by doing this, you gain eternal life and you become one of the angels, or if I remember correctly.
This is me putting on my my speculation hat. This is coming out of my own personal thought. I think this signifies two things. One is that the human beings, because we rebelled against God, the concept of becoming angels is as if we wipe the slate clean. We become those who never question God's absolute authority, right? So it's kind of a higher rank in that sense. And then the other one, this concept of immortal. My personal take is this time is a prison, right? Where we're locked into it. We see it in cross sections in one direction. But I don't think that, the domain that God is in, the angels are in, necessarily that, time operates in this way. For them, if they're outside of space and time, they don't have these limitations that we do. That's just when I think about this, those are the two kind of speculations that come to mind.
That's
I have a question.
Sorry, sister.
Oh,
I do
sorry.
understand that part of it, and that's why. So I'm looking at the verse. It says, "He said, your Lord did not forbid you from this tree, except to prevent you from becoming angels." Okay, and from attaining eternal existence. So that means the opposite is there, which is not eternal. So is that in a form of, that's why the question came about. So they're not eternal. Well, it's not saying that it's got to be physical. So even in that's, so what does it mean to you? If they are not eternal, then it's a short period. But in what form? Because they are already in paradise. That was the question. Then later on, after sister, I have another question. Back to you.
Did you want to answer his question before I ask mine?
I mean, I don't know, right? It's that again, it's kind of just in the realm of the speculation, but I do question in the sense where it's like, okay, you have paradise, but paradise still has these constraints. Um, and it just seems like this would be a step up in elevation from even that destination that we're all striving to get to. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on that.
Thank you.
Peace be upon you. I only think, from my own understanding, the devil is only using that to trick them, to deceive them, as he has succeeded in deceiving them. Because if we look at the whole scenario, even the devil himself had to seek that respite from God to be able to live till eternity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lived maybe for eternity. God would have annihilated him and finished him off once and for all. But he said, God, please respite me, because he knows that God is the most powerful. And he knows, he respects God, he honors God. It's just that he, rebelled. It's not really that if Adam did not eat that tree, that he would truly live an eternal life, he would not die. No. Even though God has designed it in a way that we must come down here for redemption, because we have um, not taken the right decision when God summoned all of us. I think in Surah 7, right? 172, thereabout. So God decided that we must come here. And he says, when guidance comes to us, those who follow his right path will be the victors, will be victorious. So in the real sense, I'm not looking at it that way. He's just been deceitful. And this is what he is still doing with us here. The devil will whisper into you, even after God has guided us, has shown us all the right path. You see, the devil would still struggle to mislead us, promise us all the illusionary things, and we would think that his promises are the truth. All right. And the moment we test or agree with him and fail, that is when we realize that we've been deceived, we've been duped by the devil. So God is calling our attention, in essence, to be careful and become serious whenever the devil whispers. We have read the Quran from cover to cover individually, and now we are doing it collectively. God has been inspiring us. God has been giving us wisdom while we study the Quran, for us to know what is good and what is bad, so that whenever the devil, is coming to take us out of God's kingdom, God's mercy, we should be conscious and decide not to fall into that same trap. This is my understanding. Thank you.
Praise God.
That's
If anybody else has feedback, I'd like to add. I'll wait and see before I ask my. Okay, so my question was, we know the stratification came because of the great feud, correct? And the angels were the creation that never sided against God. But then how did the shaitan become an angel? If in that stratification the angels were the ones that never went against God, but the other creations did, and became the jinn who were the constituents of the shaitan, how was the shaitan ever given angel status? This is where a confusion that I have in this understanding.
I could say it's so think of this. Let's say someone has bad beliefs, okay? They don't put it into action. Can we call them a wicked, a transgressor, anything of that nature yet, right? Even a disbeliever. It's like, no, not until their thoughts manifest into action and you hold the person accountable for it, right? And I see it in the same way where basically Satan had these supercilious thoughts, and we know that one of the tactics that Satan can do is that he has the ability to whisper, right? So he has these thoughts. It influences a populace. Certain individuals within that population, they without knowing that this is coming from Satan, start questioning God's absolute authority. But up until this point, Satan himself he was not one of these entities that questioned God's absolute authority or made a stance or anything. He's holding these thoughts to himself. God, knowing that he has this ego, merely creates the conditions by which Satan is going to have to put that his bad beliefs into action and can see it for himself. So when he creates Adam and then tells all the angels to fall prostrate, he knew that this was going to be the turning point for Satan, where it's no longer just a belief. Now it's manifesting itself into action. It's at that point that he became a disbeliever, right? This is just out of God's mercy. It starts with belief, but inevitably God's going to create the conditions by which our true convictions are going to be brought to reality. And up until that point, God wouldn't punish us, or hold us accountable until that thing. But if you want to make sure we don't fall into that, and it's very critical that we have the right beliefs, because it's inevitable. If someone has bad beliefs, eventually it's going to come to fruition, and they're going to act out on those beliefs. That's my understanding of this.
So how
And
was
that's
the stratification done? I'm sorry, sister. I just wanted to get a little bit more clarification. So how was the stratification done, making angels and jinns and humans, if the devil had not been exposed as of yet? What was the stratification about then?
So the first stratification is merely just you have the rebels and you have the God's creatures that submitted, right? They never question God's absolute authority. That's the first stratification. And then within that stratification, you have in 3372, where God offers the freedom of choice to the creatures, and the ones who accepted it were the human beings, right? So now we have the animals, we have the humans, and we have the angels. The last
So it wasn't
stratification,
so it wasn't necessarily about siding with Satan at that point. It was just about the authority of God.
yeah, exactly.
Correct?
But once
Okay.
Satan becomes, now they have a figure, right? Up until this point, it's just, hey, is God the only absolute God? Maybe there could be another God, right? And again, this is my own musing, so by no means am I saying that this is 100% correct. But if anyone wants to uh, chime in or give their viewpoint, uh, feel free. Yeah. So up until this point, there wasn't this other figure competing with God. It was just merely the question. Maybe there could be another God beside God. But when Satan becomes exposed at that point, yeah, certain people said, "Hey, yeah, I think Satan could do this," right? And in I believe it's in the introduction, Rashad says the half of the creatures, right, that rebelled, that sided closer with Satan, they became the jinns, and then the half that basically sided closer to monotheism, they became the humans.
Interesting. Okay. But Adam was created before that happened. Or at the same
Okay,
time. I guess it's
this is where it gets.
difficult because of the
Yeah, yeah.
way
So
time
in
works,
Arabic,
right?
yeah, in Arabic, there's two terms for humans. Okay, there's insan, and then there's basher. And it seems like basher, basically the human form, was created first. But in San, it says that the jinns were. Wait, I take that back. First came the insan, and then there's the human form, right? Because it's at that point that it says God is creating a human being, and the term used there, I believe, is basher, and it says that the jinns were before them, right? So it's
Hmm.
this aspect of what you call it, the insan is when the human being took on that responsibility, saying that they wanted the freedom of choice. That's from my understanding.
Okay, thank you. That
Yeah.
helps
But
a little
again,
bit.
it's like I'm not 100% on this. This is just from my own kind of like musing. So if someone has
I don't want to make you guys repeat yourself. My kids started talking to me, so I missed all that. But God willing, one of these days, I would really love to go over this topic, like the more or less the order of operations, because that's one thing that I've, thought about, but don't know, like, its placement. So yeah, one day I would really like to go back over this stuff, God willing.
Brother, I pretty much understand it, like what you just explained with this small difference. I think, when they had the freedom of thought, freedom of choice, all that, freedom of choice over there, it wasn't between choosing God and choosing another entity next to God. It's not like that, but you have the freedom of thought. You're thinking that you could be talking about it and people agreeing. So I think as far as Iblis, at the time he was called Iblis, he's still expressing his views. For example, he as if he's talking about, I could manage this or that, I can handle this sort of a projects, that kind of a thing, to that extent. But it hasn't broken any law. What is the breaking law is when God commands something and you say, yes, sir. If you say no, you've broken the law. So when God gathers all the creatures and describe this big project he has, that includes 7 universes, and I'll send a group of you in there to live and experiment, certain experiment. Obviously, the thought behind it has not said, because he was about to expose Iblis, putting him in a situation that he would react and break the law because of the way he was thinking. He was free to think that, obviously, that it caused that feud, but he hasn't broken the law yet as an angel. As an angel, when if you remember in the verse that it gives them this command, all the angels fall prostrate, God uses the Iblis. The minute he breaks that command, he becomes a shaitan. So, and he gets kicked out. So it's shaitan. And so the project is known to all the angels. They know that Iblis is going to be the Khalifa, the way I understand it. And everybody, the other angels kind of they object to that, he has already caused feud in the heavenly society. Why would you choose? We are much better in this case. We always praise you. So they are perplexed. Why? But regardless, when the command came that you're going to be in the service of that human person, they all said yes. So they all accepted, except Satan, thinking, well, in that project, I'm going to be a jinn. You made me out of fire. I'm better. With that reasoning, God, at that point, since he breaks the law, he's kicked out. That's how I understood it. And the physical form of a human being on earth is made of clay. The physical form of a Iblis, it would be jinn that they made of fire, that can function within the 7th universe. So, that's how I understood, because he knew he's made of fire, but he is not that yet. He's an angel until he refused God, and then he was kicked out. That's how I understood it. Back to you.
think the significance of 3372, where it says we offered the responsibility, the freedom of choice, the fact that the human being accepted it, it means that they had the ability to defy God. Meaning that God gives a command, they can choose to say, no, I don't believe that command. And realistically, what they were doing is saying, hey, I want to have this ego that they were requesting that, thinking, oh, it's going to be easy. Why would I defy God? It wouldn't make any sense. But until that opportunity was given to them, they didn't realize how tempting that would be. Or if God gives a command, that they can say, no, I don't see it that way. I want to do it this other way.
I agree that Satan was an angel before uh, God dismissed him uh, from paradise or from being an angel um, to a devil. Because if we look at the first statement that God mentioned to us, He said, when we said to the angels, fall prostrate before Adam, they fell prostrate except Satan. All of them, all the angels have their names. So God, because Satan was his name, just like we have Michael, we have Gabriel and others, because Satan was the one who rebelled, God had to mention his name specifically to us, for us to know that among the angels, the one that was named Satan was the one who uh, rebelled and went against God's command to serve us, because that was the essence of prostration. When God says they should prostrate before Adam, in my own understanding, is that God wants them to serve us here by carrying out certain duties for the humans, because we couldn't do that by ourselves. And the devil said he would not do that because he has been blessed more than us. And another essence is we cannot be, no matter how God has blessed you or honored you above others, when God gives you a command, you must honor it because He gave you that honor. He blesses you with those things that you are proud of. He can decide to strip all those blessings of you and you become zero. What will he do? This was exactly what happened to Satan. When he was given these powers, these blessings, and he became arrogant, that took it away from him and brought him down to the earth here. So specifically, God says angel. So I don't think I have to stress myself to think how was Satan an angel before he became this. I think the verse was, so self-explanatory. Thank you.
Peace. We know that God offered free will to all of the creation. Creation, the angels did not want to have anything to do with it. They did not want to have other than what God had given them, what God had put in their nature, what He had decreed for them. Iblis was full of himself, so to speak. In the Arabic, there's a word called kibr. Kibr. It comes from the same root as arrogance. Iblis was full of himself. He thought he was heavy stuff, so to speak. And all of that was known to God, but it was not known to the other angels. And it wasn't until, as we were talking earlier, and it was not until God created that situation where He commanded them to bow that Iblis' inner feelings, what he was holding inside, was actually manifest and brought out. But God knew that. The other angels did not, because they, obviously it was part of the unseen. So we understand that Iblis could not have rebelled against God's command if he did not have freedom of choice. If he was without freedom of choice, there would not have been the rebellion. But he did, and it came forth because of his arrogance and sense of superiority. And we were forewarned. I don't want to belabor this and keep this going on and on. But what I'm saying is that Adam and Eve, they were forewarned. They were told about, we were told about Satan, about Iblis. And I'm not going any further. I just wanted to bring that out. Thank you.
Praise be to God.
Brothers, I have a question on the pretty much the same subject on chapter 7, verse 17. It says, I will come to them from before them and from behind them, and from their right and from their left. And you will find that most of them are unappreciative. So on earth, we are here for a test. In the process of test is to be appreciative or unappreciative. Certain exercises as the rites, when you do that, that's a sign of being appreciative, for example. So you meet people that they're doing that. They're doing their salat, they're doing their zakat, and they're performing the Hajj, all that, and it's visible. It's to some extent you can tell that person is being appreciative or not. So you gain knowledge about people. These people are disbelievers, those are hypocrites, these are, to some extent. Now in this verse that I just read, this is they haven't been this is in heaven. To be in heaven, how does he knows? He just misbehaved and got kicked out, and God is telling God, I'm going to come after these people. And you, like as if informing God that you'll find out most of them are unappreciative. How does he know that? Nobody is being tested. You're in heaven. There is no sin really being practiced. How does he know this information that people, most of a group are unappreciative of God? He makes a claim, but does he just make a claim, or is
No, brother. No, because he was an angel. Angels are specially built creatures and have some better information than other creatures. Look at the story God gave us about Moses and his teacher. When they were traveling, most of the things the teacher carried out were special information from God that was passed on to the angels. So the angels have better knowledge and wisdom than the human beings, which God has bestowed on them. This was how he got all this. And because of this honor given to them, and he thought he was better than human beings that he was going to serve, God said then, get out of here. You cannot be arrogant, including the human beings. If God blessed you with anything and you became arrogant and you do not want to help other people with such blessings bestowed on you, God can take it away from you. So that was the special blessing God has given the angels.
that's where my hang up is. On earth, the angels know. I mean, they know who is appreciative, who is not. In
Yeah,
heaven, this hasn't happened. So how would he know that people are, they will be in that project called Earth? People gonna go there. Most of them are unappreciative in advance. He's not showing a human being like Moses. He's telling God that
Yeah,
these
human beings, God said in the Quran, the human beings are created weak. So we are weaker in nature. So you could entice the human beings and they will fall a victim of his tricks. Just as he did to Adam and Eve while in paradise, and he was able to deceive them so quickly. So they are weak. We are weak by nature. And you could see it happening now, even in Surah 34. I think Surah 34, verse 20, God said he has found the people, readily accepting his expectations. Most people, they are doing that. And God also told us even in Surah 7 here, he said, those who follow him, God will fill hell with them all together. You see? He abused the knowledge God has given him. This was why he was being punished by God.
Peace, I'd like to add on to what you all are saying here. God knows best. Iblis or Satan had knowledge. Of course, God gave him this knowledge of time, space, universe. What do I mean? The lowest universe. Because he was a higher being, he had knowledge, let us say sparse as it was, he had a little knowledge about the human being, say, being unappreciative. And as Brother Ibrahim said a moment ago, he obviously tempted Adam and Eve and they fell short. So from his point of view, we were, so to speak, putty in his hands. We took the buy-in, the lie that he told us. And Iblis felt, hey, all of them are like this. They're just like Adam and Eve. And he said that his knowledge of the future wasn't in an absolute sense of knowledge of the future. God had just created him in a manner such that he did have an awareness of what would come about in this universe, in terms of this earth, on that very limited basis. That's why he jumped to that conclusion. And God puts him in his place and lets him know that he knows, God knows, and he does not know. Because Satan didn't change his ways. He was still haughty and arrogant. Peace. Thank you.
Brother Hassan, to add to this, what Brother Douglas has just said, let us look at Surah verse 26 and 27, where God told us, O children of Adam, we have provided you with garments to cover your bodies, as well as for luxury. But the best garment is the garment of righteousness. These are some of God's signs that they may take heed. All children of Adam, do not let the devil dupe you as he did, when he caused the eviction of your parents from paradise and the removal of their garments, to expose their bodies. He and his angel, or he and his tribe see you while you do not see them. We appoint the devil as companion of those who do not believe. You see, they see us, they see what we do, they know what we do, what we are capable of doing. Because of that weakness, so we are, so easy for them to to do. And this is why God is calling us to this. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Surah 22:37. Neither their meat nor their blood reaches God. What reaches him is your righteousness. He has subdued them for you that you may show your appreciation. By glorifying God for guiding you, give good news to the charitable. Throughout the Quran, God is talking about righteousness, righteousness, righteousness. Whatever we do, the righteous will be honored, the righteous will be blessed. Our righteousness will not go unrewarded. Everything should be about righteousness. And this is why, if as we believe in God, we must, be close to righteousness in everything we do, so that we will be honored by God here and forever. Yes, righteousness is what is left of us to be doing as believers in God. We cannot believe without living a righteous life. We cannot be living a righteous life without believing in God. So the two must go together, hand in hand. And even though God is saying, let us feed the poor and the needy with the meat, but those actions are of righteousness. And this is what matters to God, not the meat, because He does not need it. We are the ones who need it. Yeah, thank you.
Peace. I'd like to refer us to we know in the Quran that God tells us that the jinn were commanded to work for Solomon, Prophet Solomon. And we are told that when Solomon passed away, the jinn kept working, and they said when in fact Solomon's body fell because the staff broke, the jinn said if they knew that he was dead, they would have stopped working. And this tells us again, as we would know, God willing, the jinn's knowledge and perception is limited. Well, here they are, jinn, with all of these powers and skill, to transform matter. To, as we know, the jinn who transported Sheba's her palace. But yet they could not discern and tell that Solomon had passed away. With all of their powers, they still couldn't do that. That again is a reminder to us that God alone gives these powers and attributes, as we know, to his creatures. And so going back to Satan in paradise and why he proclaimed that most human beings were lost, this just is an example of the fact that in heaven or paradise in the higher universe, Iblis was given an awareness of very limited awareness of the human nature, if I can put it that way. his awareness that most human beings will be unappreciative. And again, as I said before, how he tricked Adam and Eve. But again, God decrees this awareness on whom he wills. Peace. Thank you. Thank you.
So, brother, in the few, they become stratified. I can't say that word with different groups. So that part is known. How close of a relation they are with Satan. You know, whether they accepted him, they didn't fight him, or those who are confused like humans. So they are stratified like that. And so let's call that when God explains the information about a project, the project that he is God, and he is breaking it down that there are those who are wishy-washy gonna be the humans, those who are closer of thinking to Satan, those would be the companions in the form of a jinn, and those who closer to and they took the chances, the opportunity that God gave them there, that they did not want to, according to the verse Brother Dude brought up. They didn't want to participate and have the choice. They refused it. They became mountains, the sun, and all other things that have functions in this project. Now, the fact that a human being has not exposed himself yet, they haven't been examined, Satan comes in and he says, they are not appreciative of you, telling to God as if it's information he has, which he couldn't have, because they haven't shown that. They haven't gone through that test. Like as if I have 10 people in front of me, I do not know them whatsoever, and I say, no, out of the 10, 8 of them are unappreciative. I don't have that knowledge.
No, brother, I think you are making a mistake. The devil did not say they are not appreciative. He said you will make them to become unappreciative. I think this is where you are mixing some words here. He did not say they are
Is telling to
not
God, you
appreciative.
will find that
Yeah.
most of them are
Are
unappreciative.
not appreciative. Yes.
Yeah,
That's
what I'm
right.
saying.
Because
This knowledge,
yeah.
my confusion was this knowledge is not known to Iblis at that time, because human being hasn't been put to the test yet.
Yeah.
So whether he's out of arrogance, he's just making a claim, even though he doesn't know it, or he has.
Brother, let me remind you of another verse. Much earlier before this, we saw God telling us that the angels said, why should God even create us here when we will, come here and shed blood? But God says he knew what they do not know. You see? So how did he come to know that we are going to shed blood here? This is the knowledge we are saying God has bestowed on the angels to know far beyond our comprehension, far beyond us. This is one of this knowledge I want you to understand. Brother. It's God's blessings on the angels. Yes. Peace.
Peace, peace, Brother Harry. This makes me reflect on the fact, and I'm not directly referencing a verse in the Quran, but what you're pointing out reminds me that Satan was the first racist. He was the first racist. And I'll explain to you why and what I mean by that. We know that a racist thinks that he or she is superior to another person or to another species. And let me put it this way, and I beg God's guidance in this regard. Satan deceives and debunks Adam and Eve. He feels we're inferior, we're weak, we're gullible. And then he makes this broad generalization. They're all the same. They're all weak, they're despicable. Isn't that parallel to the kinds of attitudes that racists, people who are racist, have about a group of people? Likewise, Satan has this, Iblis has this attitude about this species that God created, this species of created. Sorry, Brother Harry. You know, Brother Harry, I know your name, not your name here. Remind me.
You. Yeah, you actually, this is, it answered my question. That is true. Yeah, that's out of racism that he makes that claim because he feels he is better. Mashallah. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's a generalization, right? It's a racist opinion, generalization. They're all the same. They're all the same. Peace, God.
Yeah, God bless.
You know, it's possible that Jinn or Satan or whatever was given some kind of special insight, say into the weakness of the human soul or mind or something like that. You know, an ability to like basically needle and know like what the particular weakness of the particular human is, and you know, this would be a great explanation for the arrogance. You know, this is how you'd be able to say like, hey, they're going to be unappreciative. You know, blah blah blah.
You're right about that. Satan knows who he is, but he makes a claim and he knows how wrong that we are as human beings, that we are not making the right decision. Obviously, he concludes that we are a weak species because in the face of all the evidence, we cannot make a decision to stand with God and we sort of stay in the middle. So out of that weakness, that's apparent to him. At the same time, the fact that information is not it's something that God had given him, because he's supposedly informing God that humans are unappreciative. You'll find telling God that these are unappreciative. So it's not that something that the answer of Brother Douglas makes sense to me. A racist would make statements that out of how they feel about another group, and then the conclusion that he had drawn out of the fact that humans didn't side with God and instead they were confused. So that do make sense that he concluded they're not appreciative. Otherwise, they wouldn't side with me, the Iblis. So that makes sense to me. Thanks.
Praise be to God.